Hi. Welcome. Thank you for coming. What episode number is this?
We're lost 17. Yeah. I love that you look at me, admin.
Admin over here, creative admin.
Look it up.
No, we're all good. Thank you for being here. It is such an honour and a privilege, and I know that you hold so much knowledge in this topic. We spoke, this is a part 2 of part 1 of that we've just done with Jen, who her husband watched porn since he was very young, and it then affected their marriage heavily. Had affairs, and he had a sexual addiction, and we spoke about that. So obviously you research porn, and it's part of your job as well as you're a sex therapist. So would you be able to tell us a little bit more detail what you do?
I do many things. I wear
It's good, I love it.
I wear many hats. So I'm a sex therapist, which means I work with couples or women by themselves who are struggling in their sex life, which could be anything from loss of libido to they have issues with porn themselves. Or they're experiencing a little bit like what you talked about with Jen, which is significant betrayal. And that impacts their relationship, but then also their sex life if they're choosing to continue on. So that's one side, and then lots of conversations about painful sex, that kind of stuff. And then the other side is the Light Project, which is a charity, a New Zealand charity, and I'm technically what's called the Research and Training Lead. What does that even mean? And so basically that means that I research porn, try and understand what's out there, what the experience of a young person or an adult might be. So I spend a lot of time on the sites themselves, or on like Instagram or Twitter or Reddit or something, where there will be porn content. And then how do we have conversations about that? How do we prepare our kids? What kind of tools do we give them? Do we like block everything off? And they're like, no, we will not go into the world. Or do we help them figure it out? So those are my 2 core roles.
Amazing.
Why this
So
career
good.
path?
That
is the big question.
I know,
it's so weird. It's so weird. But when I was even a kid, I remember just being fascinated by bodies, by sex, or what I knew of it at the time, you know. And the more I knew, the more I was like, this is crazy and amazing. And then by relationships, I just wanted to know everything about those things. I also had this really deep curiosity, passion, I don't know if passion's the right word, but interest in people's secrets. Not because, hey, tell me all your secrets. But because I felt secrets were in and of themselves isolating. So I thought if people who hold big secrets, and I even thought this as a kid, like when I was about 8, I remember, I was like, oh, people who have lots of secrets, maybe they don't feel like they can talk to people, or they don't have friends, or they're like, just feel weird. And those were my words as a kid, you know. I was like, oh, that sucks for them. But now I can see that the trajectory of that was really wanting to decrease shame and isolation for people. And then the bridge of I'm still fascinated by bodies and sexuality. I'm still like, I want to know everything about sex and bodies.
And
all of it.
That you are learning.
That is true. And my mum, so when I was having she's a part of the journey. So when I was having my second son, of which there are 3, which is too many. I think. It's too many. I do agree. Too many sons.
We've had Jen with all girls, and now you with all boys.
I know, it's not okay. Like, why didn't I get some of hers and she got some of mine? No, but I'm my mum, so I'm pregnant with Bo, my second, and I'm like painting his room. And I said, I'm going to do my master's and I don't know what to do it in. And at the time I was working in child abuse. And so I was like, well, should I probably do it in that? That's what I'm working in. And she said, I think you should study sex. And I was like, wow, that got weird real fast. And then she said, you know, you talk about it all the time. I didn't know that.
That's like, so crazy.
Oh, okay. Wow, this is a thing that other people are observing in my life.
Yes.
And then she said, you were always really, curious and fascinated. And then she said, if you're going to study and have little kids, it needs to be in something that you would stay up late reading about.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so she said,
Wow.
this is this thing for you. So then I did that.
And here you are.
Yeah.
What is the most understood thing with porn?
Misunderstood or understood?
Misunderstood.
Misunderstood. I think for adults, the biggest misunderstanding is that what it's like now is what it was like then. So still most of the conversations I have with adults now, like their understanding of porn is Playboy or Hustler or whatever you could get at a dairy.
Yeah.
Or like the DVD shop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But all of that stuff was censored.
Wow.
So everything that entered the country in hard copy was censored by the censor's office.
Yes.
So that doesn't happen anymore. So people have this thing, thinking around, it's kind of the same. What our kids see might be kind of the same as what I saw, but it is not the same. And that then really changes the conversation.
Yes.
Because it propels you to think, okay, I need to prepare my kids for this unique new phenomenon and not just project what I think it is into the conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a lot more aggressive, it's a lot more problematic, it's got incestual family sex themes, like it's really complex.
Yes.
Not great messaging.
Yeah.
So you can't go into it thinking it's how it was for you.
What are some of the messagings, for example?
So, I mean, my assessment is that there's really one single message about women, which is that women are less than. So women are not equal, that they don't deserve pleasure, and that they deserve aggression, and that in response to aggression, they should smile.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really sad.
Yeah.
And I would consider myself a feminist, and that's not my hopes and dreams for young girls of of the world. That they should smile in the face of abuse. Risky sex. There's a lot of racism in porn. We're having a lot of conversations at the moment, 2020, about racism, and we've got this growing intolerance of racism, which I think is really great.
Yeah, amazing.
But we don't have that conversation about how we spend our evenings viewing. So I read this really, I think, powerful quote the other day, which was said that, history is not only made in the daytime, it's made in the evening.
Wow.
And what we choose to do with that time.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real challenge to our society. It's like, there's a lot of racism in porn, and what do we say, going to do about that?
Yeah.
Yes.
There's
That's
more,
good.
but those are some examples.
That's amazing.
How do you think porn affects our relationships and marriages?
I think there's no way of denying that porn has an influence.
Yeah.
Because just like anything we see in media, it shapes what we think of ourselves,
Yes.
what we think of others, and what we think should be the way.
Yeah.
And so we see a lot of like James Bond vibes, which is, I must be like really loving sex, even if it's super fast, my body should just be so into it. Even if there's no foreplay, I should just have such a good time.
Yes.
Which is just completely unrealistic and problematic. So we're learning things from all types of media, and what we learn from porn, is that sex is largely for men.
Yeah.
That women aren't really deserving of pleasure, and that we should be theatrical. Lots of loud noises.
Yes.
Lots of wild positions.
Yeah.
That we should be up for at any time. That we should be really up for experimenting with anything, and that if we're not up for everything all the time, then something is wrong with us.
Yes.
As opposed to, actually, no, that's just not something I'm into. So there's a lot of shame for women, particularly around them not meeting expectations. Yeah. Not doing what they think their partner wants of them.
Wow. Yeah.
And then there's the betrayal side,
Yes.
which is really significant for a lot of my clients. That porn use, when done in secret, and affairs, and on what's it called? Now I'm having a mind blank. On a camming site, or on a dating platform, or sexting, all that kind of stuff. All of that, when done in secret, is an incredible wound to a relationship that's very, very hard to recover from.
What about people who aren't in a relationship that are watching porn?
Yeah, I mean, the research suggests that it has the same influences. Obviously not the betrayal side, but ideas about gender, risky sex, racism, aggression can impact your mental health, just in terms of, sometimes for people, they develop really strong habits around it. They stop engaging with friends or activities, hobbies, going to the gym because they're engaging in porn. But also has real life implications for the sex you're having, no matter if it's a casual partner or a long-term committed partner, around your expectations and what kind of sex you think you should be having.
Or maybe even the relationships too come from what you're feeding into now.
So some people will say, all porn's bad, and there's a lot's been said around, I guess, this new ethical porn.
Yeah.
And, it's something that, sparks the imagination, and if you have a low sex drive, you need it. So what's your thoughts around that?
Yeah. I mean, of course it sparks your sex drive. Of course it sparks imagination and gets you turned on. I mean, that's the premise of the industry.
Yes.
So absolutely. In the same way that it can spark your imagination about different positions, it can spark your imagination about aggression.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I guess in my idealistic dream therapy world, I like the idea of people's relationships, I guess, being organic to them.
Yes.
And that what their desires are and interests are, what their sexual script is, just as their partnership, is about them.
Yeah.
And not about what they watch.
Yeah.
Or what they see other people doing and therefore expect of their relationship.
Yeah.
I tend to think of relationships as fumbling through the wilderness, but you do it holding hands.
Yeah, so good.
And sex over your decades of life is a little bit like that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit fumbling through the wilderness.
Yeah.
Because some seasons you're like, what is happening? This is not going well. And other seasons, it happens more easily.
Yes.
And so there's wilderness. It's not all smooth sailing.
So good.
But the point is,
what is happening?
what is happening? My vagina is not doing the right thing. It's true.
It is.
And anyone who's been in a relationship for long enough knows the vagina does not always cooperate.
No.
It's not. And so that's, the wilderness.
Yeah, I love that.
But when you're holding hands through it, it's all kind of okay.
Wow. Yeah, that's so good.
So I guess I like an organic sex life to exist within each unique relationship.
Yeah.
But with ethical porn, I think that is really a conversation for adults because it's always cost money. So our young people are not engaging in ethical porn.
Yes.
So that's really important for parents to get their head around because I think there's still this argument of around we could just direct them to ethical porn. But the very premise of it being ethical is that they pay people better. So you have to pay for the content. So it's not something that our young people will engage with.
Yes.
For adults who are choosing, I think, everybody makes their own choices and absolutely that's, freedom and you're entitled to do whatever you want. Just because something is ethical in title doesn't mean the behaviours are different.
Yeah. Yes.
So there is conversation around ethical porn being inherently different, but it can still be I'm choking you or hitting you.
Yes.
But we have lots of really robust conversations behind the scenes around consent. We have a really good contract. You're paid really well. So that's what creates ethical porn.
Yeah, right.
Not the behaviour itself.
Yes.
So you can still get all the same. You can
Yeah.
still get daddy-daughter sex.
Yes.
But it's got a really well-written contract, well-paid, done with, consent behind the scenes.
Yeah, right.
But you're not going to see all of that necessarily.
No.
Does that make sense?
Yes, no, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit
You're
of
still essentially consuming somewhat the same.
Yes.
Yes.
The messages can
Content.
be exactly the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just,
It's just that you might feel better about how it was created.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a really strongly all of that anti-porn message. But there's not enough conversation at the moment about the impacts that I think we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
These are the real life impacts.
Yes.
And unless we, in relationships, but also as parents and caregivers, get our head around that, we don't know what conversation to have.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. If there's someone watching, which I'm sure there will be, that is struggling with porn, where do you suggest that they go?
Depends on what age they are.
Yeah. Well, probably our age.
Our age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah. Cool. So there are brilliant, amazing counsellors who will work with you, who won't shame you, who won't judge you for whatever
it's the
you're
shame
watching.
and judge.
Yeah. So I have clients who use porn, and it's super important they feel safe. They don't feel like I'm coming in hot on them, like, what is wrong with you? Why did you do that? Totally not. Because the reality is I completely understand why they engaged in it.
Yes.
It turns you on.
Yes.
It's just in and of itself arousing.
Yeah.
And it's used like a comfort.
Yeah.
So if you're stressed, if you're tired, if you feel rejected, if you feel overwhelmed, it makes sense that we seek out comfort. So it's completely understandable.
Yeah.
So there shouldn't be shame and judgment around that initial engagement.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
It's the problematic impacts in your life that are really going to need some support, and they're going to need some professional support because it's often a long journey. Yeah.
So overnight fix.
Yeah, no, totally.
No.
And so the women that are similar, we've heard Jen's story, and that are similar to her, that are supporting someone or their partner that is dealing with that.
Yeah.
Are there networks and places that those women can go to get that support?
Yeah, I think it's super important for, if we just speak about women, for women to go to somebody who understands betrayal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you turn up to just a general person in your community, it can go bad.
Yeah.
They can end up saying really hurtful things like, well, how often were you having sex?
Yeah.
Or were you, what were you wearing? Like, were you wearing enough nice lingerie?
Wow.
And, it's really important that your role is just to support them through this journey rather than them support you in this deep wound and betrayal that you were experiencing.
Yeah.
So talk to someone who understands betrayal, what we call betrayal trauma.
Wow.
Because the reactions for the woman are often the same as though they had been shot or had been through an earthquake, a natural disaster, their house had burnt down. They feel like the whole world underneath them has collapsed.
Yeah.
So it's a really traumatic event for some people. And so reach out to people who really understand that. So there is therapists, myself, we work in that space, and others that I can refer to. We're starting a support group for women who are experiencing significant betrayal, whether it's through affairs or through porn use online, through, somebody being on Tinder and just sending pics of themselves or whatever.
Yeah. Wow.
So it can be anything. You can be a girlfriend, a fiance, a wife, whatever.
Yeah.
Because in the isolation, things feel worse.
Yeah, totally.
In the secret, in the darkness, you by yourself, it's worse.
Yeah.
And so I really believe in us knowing we're not alone.
Yeah.
And then in hearing other people's stories, it's just an automatic sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why we're doing the group.
Yes.
Alongside
awesome.
the one-on-one work.
Yeah.
Amazing. And we're going to put up
resources on that.
Resources on how women can get connected into that. And just as you're speaking, I know we have one more question here that I'm going to ask. Maybe I'll ask this as well. Your job, you see so much. With your knowledge, you have to research, so you are exposed to so much. I just can't help but wonder, how has that impacted your world, your marriage or kids or mind? How do you separate that?
Well, you kind of shouldn't,
Yeah.
So if it was too separated, I wouldn't be as invested in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So if I removed it too much from my emotional well-being, I wouldn't work as hard in the space.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I guess my goal isn't to not feel it. My goal is to feel it and do something about it.
Yeah.
So I still get overwhelmed. sometimes I cry. I've thrown up sometimes after I've seen something.
Wow.
Like, I still have big reactions, but I think that's human,
Yes.
and it propels me more. So I wouldn't want to take that away.
Yeah, okay.
It definitely has an impact on me, has an impact on my marriage, my parenting, all of it. I have really super supportive husband and really supportive family, and I get supervision, those things.
Yes.
But I think the fact that it impacts me, and I'm like a really quite, I'm a competent, confident, educated, put together person in my 30s who's had stable relationships, if it impacts me, then what does that mean for people who don't have the objectivity, who don't have the knowledge, the expertise, whatever. And so I think if I'm shaped by this, everyone's shaped by this.
Yeah.
And if it's changing me, it's for sure changing the 14-year-old who's watching it and being exposed to it on a regular basis. So I guess that's given me insight.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. You're amazing. Thank you so much for what you do.
Yeah.
It's so great that you care so much about it, because it really will, like, I've got 3 children, Emma, you've got Marlo, I've got a young 13-year-old sister, and you do feel the weight of it. I mean, we're even discussing in my marriage now about YouTube and all of those things, and we're so concerned about them seeing scary things, but yet there's also so much more out there than just scary things. There's like porn and all of those elements, and so as a parent it can feel really overwhelming coming into this new generation with social media, and that's why we want to flood the platform with conversations like this, and that's why we're so passionate about Human As. So we're so grateful to have you here, and all your expertise and wisdom and realness, and understanding that it's a hard space to be in, and porn is real, and people are real, and there's no judgment there, and I think that's important for people to know, be on that empathy level there as well, is really cool.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So good.
Thank you.
You can go to a lot of different spaces.
Yes,
with the
you
subject.
can.
You need like a part 3, 4.
But, okay, why don't we do a
5, 6, 7.
10-part series?